the green room there. I see Nick's just joining us in the chat there as well. Hello, Nick. Nick, we have got a full house in terms of people that I can invite on here. But what we'll do, John was saying too late in the chat. What we'll do is, as soon as someone's made their first point, we'll get you onto the screen. So if you just hang on in there, we'll definitely got you on the screen as well. So what's going to happen in this particular session? Well, we are going to have 4 SEO superstars join us: Bridget Randolph, Chris Green, John Alderson, and Nick Wilsden, all going into this technical success workshop. So it's looking into specific businesses and how they can actually action the tips shared in the first part of the book, which happens to be the first 4 chapters. So we've got 4 websites: Sky Factory, Succulents Box, and we've got a children's hospital and also a digital agency. So a few different types of businesses there to be looking at. It's hopefully we'll give many good examples for you watching, although you're not involved in these businesses specifically, because they may be similar in terms of target market or the way that they operate. Hopefully you can take quite a few tips away from this particular session. So let's focus on the gentleman, the lady that we've got involved in this particular session, and give them an introduction. So I'm just getting to my notes so I can introduce everyone. Let's start with Bridget. So Bridget Randolph, she's a storyteller and a human. That's what you say in your Twitter handle, isn't it? So I love giving people introductions that they call themselves. So unless you want to change that, that's how I guess how people introduce you. But she also happens to be a digital marketing and SEO expert, and you can find her over at bridgetrandolph.com. So thank you so much for joining us, Bridget.
Thank you, David. I'm excited to be here.
Great stuff. Chris as well. So Chris Green, he's Head of Marketing Innovation at Footprint Digital, contributor for State of Digital, and also an on-crawl ambassador. You can find him over at footprintdigital.co.uk. Hello, Chris.
Hello. Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, good to have you here. And last but not least, John Alderson is a digital strategist and marketing technologist. He is head of special ops at Yoast, and you can find him over at johnalderson.com. Hello, Jono.
Hello, absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you all for coming on. We'll hopefully be able to give Nick a bit of an introduction when he comes on. Whichever one of you gives the worst answer, you'll be kicked off. And
Jeopardy.
We're obviously focusing on in the first chapter. We're focusing in on actionable tips that these businesses can take from the first chapter. So let's go back to Bridget to begin with. Bridget, which of those businesses would you like to zero in on to begin with, and what tip, maybe to begin with from that section, do you think is appropriate for that business to look into?
Sure. Well, one of the tips that I really like from the first chapter of the book is about looking at what's already working. I think actually a couple different people in the book mentioned this. And that's something that I think, especially really with all of them, but we can just start at the top and look at Sky Factory maybe. One of the things that I know they were asking about was kind of what's the right channel for new markets, what's the right channel for, let me check, I wrote it down, for more top of funnel initiatives. And the first question I'd want to ask them, or have them ask themselves, is what they know about their customers and what works right now for their customers. Because I know there's a lot of best practice advice that we give people based on what works for consumer businesses and kind of the B2C market that works differently for B2B, which is kind of, from what I can tell, the bulk of what they do. And I don't know if you want to mention what they are. They are a business that does these sort of special windows and skylights.
Sure. Sure, yeah. So it's luxury skylights and kind of other windows and letting natural light in for businesses. So they're focusing in on trying to differentiate their product from, I guess, just regular windows. So kind of businesses, large premises will feel able and justified in investing more money in these types of things.
Yes, so I know one of the questions they had sort of focused in on is, should we redesign our website to highlight the quality of the product that we sell? And I guess it's an interesting one, because when I look at the website, the first thing that I think is, it doesn't necessarily look like every website that's sort of coming out targeting the general population. But from my experience with these sort of more pricey B2B high volume type of companies, that's not necessarily what their customers look for to determine whether a business is the right fit for them. So I guess the first thing I would be asking them is how much they've looked at the customers they're trying to reach and how much they understand what they're looking for when they come to the website, and making sure they're serving them that rather than worrying about getting flashy.
The thing that jumped out at me from the website was the amount of space to begin with.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, they're trying to tell a visual picture regarding what they're offering or providing as an end result of what they offer, but they're maybe trying to be too clever with that. Do you agree?
I definitely noticed that there wasn't any copy anywhere above the fold, and it makes it, I will say, unfortunately, that can make it look like something's not loading, apart from just not aligning with best practice for SEO as well. So I would definitely, that's one thing I agree that kind of immediately jumps out as a little confusing for the user, but also probably not great for search either.
So John Gilmore saying in the chat, is it possible to show the website as well? So Chris has shared that. I'll attempt to share the screen at the same time as well. So Bridget, how would you recommend that they move on then? Should they split test, or should they simply just change the landing page to something else that's a bit more conventional?
I would say with that, the thing on the homepage where it's kind of a lot of space is something I would just look to shrink that image and kind of bring the content higher up. I'd be interested in what the others think, but I don't think that's something you need to worry too much about testing a lot or kind of over-engineering. It's a fairly simple thing. In terms of kind of the rest of that and getting more insight into customers, I think the answer there is to talk either to the sales team or to the customers themselves about their experience using the website, about how they interact with it, about the types of questions they have when they look at it. And we see here, like also the copy here, it kind of takes you a while to get to the point about what they actually sell. One note on that too is I noticed on the products page, a lot of the sections they lead with the product name, which isn't going to be helpful to anyone who isn't already familiar with what the products are. So that's just another piece around making it more in the language the customer is going to be using to look for this stuff, as opposed to, assuming knowledge that they may not have yet. I
think John was bursting to jump in there, sharing different thoughts in the chat there. What are your thoughts, John? Jono?
So two things. One is we all made this mistake. They're not actually skylights and windows. They're like digital display screens for enclosed rooms like dentists and display areas. And they do such a bad job describing that, as Bridget says, using human language. If you actually try and read that homepage, it's incredibly dense and it's very aspirational and very big thinking, but it's so hard to understand if you ever get past that big floating screen. I think the other thing that jumped out to me was from their brief, they were saying they do really well at trade shows and in events, and that's where they really convince people that these are high-end and very high quality. But that only scales as far as the number of people who are already at those events that you can talk to. And if they want to grow, they need to unlock a different type of audience, which means thinking about what are the problems people have who want these kinds of things, who don't even know they exist. Like, I have a dentist. I am willing to bet significant money that he has no idea that you can get a virtual skylight for the ceiling. But he wants to make that environment comfortable and safe and reassuring. How do you create content that helps them understand that? And that's not saying this is prestigious, it's expensive, it's better quality at trade shows. It's creating top of funnel content that talks to those audiences about the problems they have and the things they're trying to solve, which there's nowhere for on this site. And I think that the question that came to is, should we design this? I think the issue isn't so much the design. Yes, it needs to be prestigious and exclusive, but actually they need to have somewhere where they can talk to people about the problems they have. And they just don't have that at the moment. Chris, you're waiting to jump in.
For me, this the whole what do they do? What is the product? Actually, when I got it and it clicked, I actually kind of enjoyed the initial header afterwards, which is probably a little too late for many who would have left. But for me, just when you kind of see the screens in situ and you start to kind of work them all out, they begin to make more sense. So even if it's just like a slow panning of a screen, like around a screen, to show that it is not a real skylight, it needs some moving image, some video. And there's a lot of mention in the book on video and the importance of that. And I think for this product, for something that isn't what it seems on first glance, especially when as it's presented, it doesn't make sense, a video or two, that isn't actual sky but is a skylight would really have actually said what they need to say. And it just makes sense. Anyone who has sat in a dentist chair or has any of the different ways, or even just wants a fireplace that isn't a fireplace, I think that suddenly clicks really quickly. And they've got a lot of images. They obviously realize that this is a very seeing is believing kind of space, but just go to the next step onwards, I'd say. I mean, that I wouldn't rebuild the website. I'd reinvest in this image library, and I'd turn it into a moving image library. And just the avenues down social and all of these other directions, and what you can then do of retargeting to show, even if someone's only been on the website and seen the first image or the first video, well, they can have videos of these screens in situ on case studies following them for the next couple of weeks. And I think actually that would be great. Actually, Nick's dropping some things in the chat there.
I was going to say Nick's dying to get on, I think so. Bridget, can I take you off for a second? We'll get you on again in a bit.
I like this hot seat style.
Here we go. We've got Nick coming on there. I don't know if you guys agree. I love looking at content, and I always think of Simon Sinek's start with why approach, kind of why, how, what. And I think they seem to be missing the why at the start of the landing page. To me, after you scroll down from the sky, they go on to the how. The how is the vastness of the sky and talking about that. And then they go into the what we make. But there's no why to begin with there. There's no customer testimonials. There's nothing for people to resonate with to move further into the website. Nick, hi, thanks for jumping on there.
Hello. Usual technical difficulties.
So what are your initial thoughts on this particular website?
Yeah, I think you said some very good points. I mean, it's a visual website. It needs to, and you just don't get what it's selling really when you first get there. And I'm a big believer of just do it simply and explain within a very short period of time when people arrive what you're selling. And I thought these were actually windows as well when I first saw the website. So I wasn't aware these were kind of moving screens. So I think I would definitely look at video content, image content. Something like cinema graphs would be great for this, because I think that would really illustrate the fact that this is kind of moving content, within a sort of static room. And that has a low size compared to sort of video content. So that's why I quite like cinema graphs. I think they're really underrated, really, on the web. But it gives you a kind of cinema effect for a GIF, which is very useful. But yeah, I think testimonials. Tasha's talking about testimonials. That needs to be a thing that grabs you in and shows you kind of the why. Definitely, this was quite a confusing kind of website. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Start off. Would you actually start off with reviews and testimonials? A quote from a customer to begin with on the homepage.
Yeah, I think it gives you trust. So I think go straight in with testimonials. I'm a very strong believer in those.
Yeah, I think
Great.
that for me, sorry, just one of the kind of issues with how they position themselves. They're the high quality element, and you know, there are a lot of other people in the marketplace. I think, who have they worked with? What have they done? How can they demonstrate that? Again, when you start getting in and you start seeing some of the situations or environments that you find them, you start to feel that, okay, these are making up really high quality kind of settings, but there's no names or details attached to it. There is none of that. I get it. They're reputable. It's just it's so close. And again, this is one of those ones where, you know, we're not driving leads. We need a new website, and it's kind of maybe not. Let's increment this approach a bit better. Just speak. They must have worked with some fairly big names, some reputable clinics, and areas like that. Leverage that, because that's worth far more than rebuilding the website. For me, anyway.
And John, obviously, you said in the chat as well that the inner pages kind of destroy the illusion of quality, and
Oh gosh, yeah.
They aren't that great. If it's a high quality product, then I guess the website's got to be high quality. And but what's the definition of a high quality website?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know, but like there's so many little things, like the logo is quite pixelated in the corner and the typography isn't great and the positioning of the menu is not quite perfect. I think just that care and attention to detail, if they're saying that their products are as high level and perfect as they are, then to have a website that feels a little bit not quite right, it's going to make me question whether or not the product's the same. It's going to make me nervous.
Okay, great. Chris, I'm thinking of kicking you off in a second here and getting Bridget back on there. Do you have anything in particular that you want to add just before I do that?
No, they're the key ones.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, so we'll come back to Chris again in a second there. We will look for, because it always happens that whoever's not live in the chat room is also sharing great thoughts in the chat. We've got we'll call the live video feed is sharing great thoughts in the text chat. But anyway, that's Bridget back on there. I think we should probably, if possible, move on to a different website. We've got other websites to chat about there, and another one that I thought would be interesting to move on to is Succulents Box. So I like niche websites that really focus in on something very specific here. They seem to be certainly doing the targeting. A nice job of the targeting in terms of being very niche, and they've also got a very strong call to action there. I see. I'm looking for some nods there. Nick nodding a bit there. So are Succulents Box doing a lot of things well, Nick?
Yeah, I really like that site. I think it's in a niche. It's worked out. It's basically the difference between a sort of brochureware website and an application to sell something. It's sort of completely geared towards selling this, and I think that those sort of modern style of websites work really well. This relates to the book we were kind of talking about, flywheels, and I think they are a business that have really embraced the idea of a flywheel. They're sort of sitting there working out what they can push out, the conversion rate, and yeah, I think it's a very strong website.
Okay, and is there anything that they could be doing better? Could they be having a better call to action, better content in the blog, better keyword targeting, any user experience that could be improved?
For me, it has to be about content for these guys. I think they've developed the engine there, which is generating the revenue. So they need to see how they can now widen that out and expand the funnel. And so that has to be around content. They've done a bit of that on the blog, but I would be thinking about how I can kind of bring in far more traffic through content on the site, and then sort of best practice e-commerce as well would be a good idea. Okay,
so kind of blogging at the moment, they've got nice articles certainly as well. How would they go about driving more traffic? Do they need to be publishing more articles? Do they need to be promoting them better?
I think it's more, but I think it's the tone of voice for me could be stronger. I think they need more of a voice behind them and a personality, and I think that's where I'd be heading with that blog and that kind of content. They could. It's a little bit, it's a little bit kind of factual, not that exciting, really, the content that's there. But yeah, that's how they can get. It's obviously a very niche area, and there's obviously people who are absolutely enamored with with these plants. So I think that's something you have to kind of grasp hold of in this, and kind of how can you find the people who love these plants and engage with them.
So would you have videos of satisfied customers or videos of people
Plants growing,
doing whatever they do with their plants?
watching these plants? I think, yeah, you could definitely. I mean, if you've got an engaged target audience that love these plants, then obviously they're going to be taking pictures of their own plants. So you could have quite an engaged audience kind of sharing content back with you. So yeah, just it seems like that sort of engagement isn't really there with the sort of succulent community, which I'm sure exists.
Yes, I'm sure. I actually had to research exactly what it was beforehand, but I'm sure many people knew precisely what it was. Bridget, were you aware of what it was beforehand?
Well, I'm very familiar with subscription boxes, and I have my own set of succulents on my kitchen windowsill. So, but I think it is a very specific audience that wants to subscribe for something like that. Like I know for me, I've had my plants and they sit there, and I've had them for months. I wouldn't know what to do with if they were coming every month, where to put them. So I want to kind of go back to something Nick pointed out, which is these are a very specific audience, very specific type of person that would be interested in this. I love the idea of engaging them more on social and kind of, especially because it's a subscription, sharing what you're getting in your box each month, I think is a great idea. And also just trying to really understand the different angles of content and the different stages of content you can be looking at. What do the customers actually want to know about these topics? Is it, more information about the plants, or is it something more specific, or, what are the different sort of angles they're asking questions about? I think that's something there's going to be plenty of opportunity to research with kind of traditional SEO content and that kind of thing. But also with customer research. And I agree that even though it's a very slick looking website, it also is a little bit soulless in that it kind of looks like something that came out of the box, So I would love to know more also about the people who created this idea and why they care about succulents and all of that sort of thing that makes it more individual and personal.
I think oh, sorry. I was going to add in for because Jono is a big proponent of kind of getting the model right before we kind of get into the detail of SEO, and I think Bridget's mentioned that as well. So I think it's a big question there. Do you want to have succulents kind of delivered on a regular basis? What's the end goal of that? To fill your kitchen full of plant succulents. So I think maybe there is a slightly different tweak they could do to their model. I mean, when I look at that, I think about a similar idea to Pokemon. It's brilliant. You can go collect them all, and they obviously have a massive range of succulents available. So why are they not engaging the community to work out the rare ones, to pick up custom ones? That would be kind of an interesting twist on that model, rather than you send out the same. But then that obviously feeds into logistics and everything else, and we start talking about how the business works. But that would kind of take away the soulless aspect, I think, because these people, if we're working from the premise that they want to collect these plants and build out their collection of succulents, then how is this site helping them and informing them?
Absolutely love that. I think Jono, you love that idea as well.
Oh, it's wonderful. I want to gamify it. I want a screen with like little badges of each one I've collected. That's great. That's
the rare
cool.
black.
Well, that's one of the things that struck me. They have so many. Like I called the site, and there are thousands and thousands of these, and they're all slightly different. Some of them different colours, different. Yeah, they're huge. So at the moment, I don't think they're benefiting from that scale. And if they are that big and they're not taking advantage of it, that feels like an easy win.
Do you think that they need to be reaching out a little bit more to fans of gardening in general who aren't so passionate about these plants to bring them into the fold, as it were? Or do you think there's a large enough community that are already aware of it and passionate about it?
I think it's not the gardening. Oh, sorry. After you.
Oh, I was just going to say, I feel like that's the question they probably need to answer rather than us. Go ahead, Jono. I didn't mean to.
I think that's something that, like, succulents are really trendy at the moment, right? And they're not selling boxes of succulents; they're selling the Instagram lifestyle. And there's a huge opportunity to cash in more on that. Things like they had 2 blog posts about Halloween. And creating your own succulenty pumpkin, and there was a Christmas one as well, and they just weren't very well executed. They'd custom made a video, they had a whole bunch of stuff that they'd done, it just wasn't sharp enough. And I think if they tightened that up, they took some notes from people like Tasty and some of the other brands who are playing really well in this space, they could explode on Instagram. They could sell this idea of having that lifestyle.
So let's kick off Jono for now and get back Chris in just now. So I will do that and get Chris's opinion on succulents. Here we go. Chris is hopefully going to come back in just now. And I haven't been able to focus an awful lot on their social media success. Have either of you been able to have a look at their social channels to see how they're doing? I know that there are links to Pinterest, to Instagram on the bottom of their website there. There's a lot actually of views on their Pinterest page, 2.4 million there as well, 11.7k followers on Instagram. So there's certainly very niche audiences, and a lot of people are following them. So it does seem to be particularly successful in those networks. Chris, welcome back there. What are your thoughts on this particular business?
I think for me one of the things that they're missing almost is that impulse kind of purchase angle. And I think the site feels tight. But I think, Nick, you mentioned kind of basic e-com sort of best practice, and I think there's some things about, what are the payment methods that I can use? Can I do one-click pay? Can I, one-click logins? Can I use, this is so easy now to find, whether it's Braintree or similar ways of just hooking into that. And I think for me, the price point and the lifestyle that it's sold, if you have come across it via Instagram, you've got that in the moment, point of do I buy, do I not? I've just finished a glass of G&T. Oh, look, a succulent, click. And I think that's roughly what we're kind of looking at. And I think if you manage to drive that once or twice with someone who has no intent to subscribe, well, providing you're tracking that purchase properly and you start to see the frequency of purchasing, who you can start pushing potential subscriptions to as well, because you might not initially want one a month, because that might petrify you because houses are only so big. But if you bought a couple because it's that easy, then you might be persuaded, because if you've already made a few purchases, they can say, well, this is how much you could save if you carry on with your habit as it stands. And I think that just tie it into the social experience so much better. The site feels okay from mobile from what I've seen, but by tapping this a few times, then perfect. That's kind of ready made for me.
John has been sharing some great advice in the chat as well. So I guess we'll let him come back in at some point and share that advice. But I mean, part of it is about being more than the box, and focusing on care, lifestyle, tell stories about the boxes as well. Nick here nodding away there. Obviously, it seems as if this website, technically is decent, and it's more about personality and stories, and really getting that copyright. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's always my emphasis on. I kind of look at this as a medium-sized website. So yeah, that's always kind of my emphasis with this website like this. Get that bit right. I think there'll be some e-commerce tweaks you can make, and Chris is going to refer to those. And I think something I'll be looking at for them as well would be schema, because I think that's a really big thing. And they're obviously talking about a huge number of entities with with succulents. I mean, they're all related. You can just imagine the whole knowledge graph around succulents being something that they could expand on brilliantly, within their website. So I think that's something I'd want to do for them, and see, if we could pick up a lot more listings in Google with that kind of information. So there must be a sort of crowd of people who are just searching for these anecdotally, care for these things, whether to buy them. That's the kind of traffic you want to hook into.
Great. Let's move on to the next website, because there's kind of 4 websites that have been submitted. There are really different types of websites. So this one's actually a children's hospital, and I guess one of the challenges they're facing is that they're part of a main hospital. So they just want to make sure that they can easily be found. And although the homepage of the children's hospital is fairly obvious, it's not necessarily that easy to find from the homepage. So I guess the key questions are: is it possible for search engines to find that? Is there any way, while incorporating as part of a main hospital, to make it easier to navigate to, or for people to find? Does anyone have any initial thoughts from this particular website?
Yeah. Well, Sorry.
Okay, Nick.
I'll just very quickly kick me off for a bit then. I really I like this website. They've got a very similar problem that I've seen on some of the Vodafone sites as well, because we have sort of enterprise and consumer, and they often occupy the same website. So this is a very common problem. You have a whole kind of silo business, and how does it make itself more apparent on the homepage? And you say there are links to the children's part on the homepage, but I think you need to have a much tighter integration between the main website and the children's part. And that's basically around more front page coverage on that site. The other area I'd really focus on would be search. Because they've made a big, they've emphasised the search box, top right-hand corner there. We know that sort of 15% of people that come to the site will use the search bar, and this is largely an information site. I mean, they're trying to share information, and they've gone for a very structured search solution. Which the problem with that is it's great because you know exactly what you're delivering to people, but then you often miss the opportunity there. So if I put in something like contact, the thing that comes up as the option is contact dermatitis, which obviously isn't really what I was looking for. I was looking for contacts in the hospital. So you kind of, by giving people a very strict pathway to search results, you miss the opportunity of kind of having a much more free form information that you can give back to people, and then harvesting that to work out what people are actually looking for, and then starting to serve that content through your site. So you create a process where people are searching for things, and you've got that constant regeneration part based on the search data that you're collecting. But that's what I'd be looking at for them.
That's great advice. So actually look into the data that you're collecting on the website and use that to improve your user experience and the content that you publish moving forward.
Yep.
Chris, have you any follow-up thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two kind of main themes. I think the one we've half sort of touched upon is if you're in the children's sort of element of the site and you want to stay there, it's very easy to get out of that sort of section of that kind of experience, and it's even harder to find your way back again. Especially if you've landed there, because all the issues were mentioned. I think for me the clearest one is I've just started scrolling down to the footer and clicking on the logo, but that's broadly speaking not best practice from user experience in that extent. The other thing that really causes me potential worry, I think it causes visitors a lot of angst, is the speed of the site. In particular, mobile performance it's not great. I've just reran it through now for just ran it through PSI just for page speed insights, just for kind of looking at, and it's a slow speed compared to other pages. Looking at the origin, particular score is 11, which is pretty dire. And then when you kind of look at just everything about it really, first contentful paint, speed index, time to interactive, it is slow. And if you are on a mobile device, and if you are particularly looking, you're trying to find where you could actually get an appointment or a referral, if you are on your mobile, or if you kind of trying to do that action on that device, it is just painful. I mean, the one thing I will say on that is there are kind of click to call options in sort of fairly well placed positions on a lot of the pages, but for me, still, it's just the weight of the content and the time this seems to drop in that just, it's an incredibly sort of, well, I guess tedious sort of browsing experience as it stands. And, that's just not what the users of this site really need.
So if you're looking for quick wins to improve that, what are some of the first things you would do?
I don't know. I think looking at the images themselves and the size of them, are they, really as small as they can be? Are we embracing WebP and bits and pieces like that? I think that's kind of always a quick win, and it is always worth looking at that. I think it's not sort of hideous from that, but it is just looking at that, potentially, what are the third-party codes doing? What's the caching looking like? How much are you making the user's device kind of work? So as all the scripts and the language of the page built, is it necessarily? I think could just do with really simplifying. There's a lot going on when you're loading these pages. I think that does cause problems.
So do you think that the whole website maybe needs to be redesigned to better incorporate the children's hospital as part of that, so that people don't miss it as easily?
Oh, I mean, the top level navigation and that whole side of things and how you get to it. I think they need to work out, or once you're within the children's section, are you likely to want to leave it as part of your browsing experience? If that's the case, can you be siloed in that a bit more? Can we make the children's navigation a bit more of the primary there?
Jesse, John nodding away quite a bit there. Is this symptomatic of businesses or multiple businesses that tend to be glued together, that don't necessarily go that well together on the same website?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the politics of that are going to be nigh on impossible to navigate, right? That's not a technical issue, that's an organizational one. And they definitely should fix it, and nobody should be comfortable with it, but they'll struggle to do that in the short term. What I did notice they're also really suffering from now, which they should be controlling and doing a much better job of, is just general housekeeping. There are broken links everywhere. Somewhere pages have been removed, somewhere there are obvious typos in the link destinations themselves. Even some like the sidebar nav in some of the deeper pages go to 404s or just go to the home page. Even things like the location pages for some of the specialty care providers, links in the news section, all sorts of broken images. There are pages full of lorem ipsum, which are in Google, which I found. And these are all small issues individually, but they certainly influence the perception of quality from users and Google. And again, if the hospital can't be trusted to look after its web pages, can they be trusted to look after the health of my child? And this is an extremely sensitive market, for want of a better phrase. And the current state of the content says we're not managing our assets. So if they're stuck with this website and it being imperfect, they should definitely have their own house in order just to try and fight back. And at the moment, they don't.
Okay, so don't attempt to do any off-site marketing at the moment. The only thing to focus in on is the structure of the website, the health of the website, ensuring that the user experience is great, and obviously the speed is improved as well.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't seem like a very happy story at the moment. Is there anything that they're doing particularly well? Bridget wanted to add something.
I want to jump in. Yeah. I mean, this is just like, so I think it's all the technical stuff we've been highlighting is super important and very valuable to be aware of. It's also, as we all know, on a website like that, going to take a while to to be able to implement, especially as part of a much larger organization. But one thing I think they could start looking at immediately, and that I have seen have a really positive effect especially in the healthcare space, is local SEO and GMB, Google My Business profiles. They are kind of in an unfortunate position that they're in Boston, Massachusetts, and there's Boston Children's Hospital there owning searches for Children's Hospital in Boston. But I think there is still opportunity around really like claiming those listings, possibly even breaking them out if it would make sense by department, and really fleshing out those listings. Because when I took a quick look, they had a few reviews on there, a few photos. It was unclear to me from a quick glance whether they've really been managing the listing at all, or if it's just kind of developed somewhat organically. But that can be, especially because when we think about hospitals and any sort of thing where you need to go to the place and spend a lot of time there, there is like a big opportunity in local search to just gain some visibility immediately, and you're setting things like the homepage of that listing to the page of the site that is relevant. So that would be where I might start if they're struggling to get buy-in initially for like a larger site overhaul.
I love your example or your tip of claiming the listing by department. Is that something that is easy to do, or can it be an issue because they've just got the one address, so they may actually not get approved by Google from their listing?
I wouldn't call myself a local expert, just for clarity, but I have seen it work. I guess I know that Google does have options if you have multiple businesses or different like areas, I guess, within the same address. They have the option if you have like a suite number or something. I don't know the details of this particular hospital and how it's laid out, So it may or may not be something they're able to implement, but I know that other hospital systems have used similar things and seen success with it.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate it's a big topic in itself, and it's if it's not your core area of focus, it's a nightmare to stay on top of. I think I remember making a submission in the past and it not being allowed because there was another listing of the same address as well. I would imagine that Google My Business is getting a little bit more clever now and able to differentiate what's likely to be a different business to the listing that currently exists. Jono, have you done any work with Google My Business listings at all?
No, local is not my area of expertise either. Who's good on local?
Chris isn't putting his hand up. No, that's fine. There's lots of things that can be done with that as well. In relation to that, maybe someone like Greg Gifford would be good to talk to about that. I know Greg would start to say things like, get reviews, kind of publish your own photos, get people to upvote different things in there as well. So it's about involving people who have, I guess, used the hospital in the past, and get them to add either local reviews there as well, because it's sometimes easier to get those local listings ranked highly in Google or in the relevant packs, or much easier than getting your own site ranked to begin with as well. And we did have another website that we're going to consider and look into, and this should be certainly right up the street of many of you, because it's a digital marketing agency. So let's get the website up. And the website is the brand Flypaper, but the domain name is actually customerswhostick.com. I think they were a little bit concerned with the redesign that they had received on their website, and they were looking to get it redesigned again. So I guess they're aware that things can be improved, but from your perspectives, what needs to be improved first? Jono, would you like to dive in first?
Sure. So they're using a site builder tool called Duda, which is reasonably good. It has lots of shiny features to let you drag and drop stuff, and comes with support for lots of modern things like PWAs and shiny toys. However, it has a really heavy reliance on JavaScript for all their media, their images, their animations, things like pagination in the blog, and it's so slow. There are literally thousands of lines of inline CSS in the source code. Most pages are 6, 7, 8 megabytes, even on a mobile connection. It takes 10 seconds to load in some cases. And I guess one of the advantages of using something like this is you can be really granular and precise over the layout. You can do some really arty, creative stuff. But it doesn't look great on mobile, and even some places on desktop. There are places where the text is a bit small, the typography is off, the layout's not perfect. So I think if they're looking at starting again, if they have the resource in-house and the expertise, move to WordPress, and manage and build their own theme, which gives them control and lets them do this properly. If they're short on resource, then maybe this isn't the best tool, maybe they're stuck with something like it, but definitely a bit more attention to detail. They can achieve all of these types of layouts with something like WordPress or Gutenberg. They can pay more attention to things like the typography and the layout, and just give things a bit more focus. At the moment, it feels a little bit off the shelf.
Now, when you say their own theme, do you actually mean have their own theme designed from scratch, or do you mean kind of use a theme that is currently available and customize that for their requirements?
If they have the resource, then definitely do one from scratch. Obviously, they can build it on some of the popular frameworks to cut some corners and make everything a bit easier than truly start completely from scratch. But the further away they can get from being stuck with the constraints of this third-party thing, the more they can design and tailor something that is fit for them and doesn't come with all that bloat and overhead that they're stuck with at the moment. Any particular frameworks that you'd recommend? Genesis is good. The next up and coming one, if they really want to play strong, is WP Rig. It's being developed by a bunch of the smartest people in the WordPress space and a bunch of Google employees. And it's very much how do you build modern websites in modern ways and workflows on top of WordPress. Really nice. I'll share a link in the chat.
Superb. Sounds great. Chris, what are your thoughts on this particular agency?
Oh well, I'm sure they're lovely people. No, so the trouble I've always got when you go to agency websites, and I've been involved in a few of them, my own sort of various employers included in that, is the content and how you actually how they talk about themselves and what it is they do. And this whole there's a degree of, you know, how do you want to optimize for it? How do you want to sort of talk about the sort of the services? And for this, I think in some instances, I don't know if the word arrogance necessarily is the right word, but when you actually get down to the pages of what it is they're actually doing, so for like the online presence sort of service, as it were, it's very kind of sparse, and the main kind of focus of the page, well, besides the images, is just kind of a list of kind of stuff, I guess, and it doesn't really talk to me. And I work in the space, and I don't know if it's necessarily a case that if you are a customer, you just might, you know, see the large pictures, see a few words that ring a bell. Yes, I want my online presence. I'll get in touch with these guys. I'm not convinced that it's going to necessarily work like that. I think their service pages need to work harder and need to be a little bit more explicit. And I think that's an agency problem. You know, you can sound very kind of uncool as an agency if you make it explicit what problem you're solving someone. How do you do it? What are the results? You know, you can overthink it, I think. And I think so the issue, that kind of content issue, I think spreads potentially in other areas. And I think visually, I feel like I like what their brand's trying to do. And but even when you hit the contact page and you're presented with all of their different locations, part of me is like, oh, that's kind of impressive. They've got a lot of offices, but you want to just get in touch with someone. You've got to find the office that's nearest to you, assuming that you are kind of close enough. And even then, when you get to the contact page, it's very sparse.
But when you talk about brands, obviously the domain name's customerswhostick.com, and then the brand appears to be Flypaper. Is there an issue with not having a domain name that actually reflects the brand that you're trying to create in your website?
Yeah, in a sense that you can be too clever for your own good sometimes, I think. You know, you get it. You type in customers who stick, you see the brand Flypaper, and I think if you want someone who's going to be a bit kind of creative or disruptive or that sense, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I do often think that agencies maybe can operate a little differently in the space to others. I wouldn't do that myself. That's not something that just kind of gets a bit... I don't know, it's just runs against the grain. It's making their life more difficult to start with. If you have a conversation with Flypaper and you go and Google Flypaper, that's the domain you're looking for. And that's the...
I was a bit uncomfortable with the headline on the homepage as well, just digital marketing made easy, because my initial thought is, okay, is it a technology platform? Is it an agency? I want to know straight away if it's an agency, you know, what type of business it is. You know, call to action's fine, but that's the thing that jumped out, as well as the domain name. And obviously, Bridget, you were saying in the chat there, that made me unhappy, the domain name not matching. Is that something that can make a measurable negative impact on your success?
I mean, I found it confusing, first of all. I went to, again, as I saw their locations, so I was looking for them in local, and I was looking for, by the time I got to that point where I was scrolling, I was looking for customers that stick as the brand. And then I found Flypaper, and it just made me confused, and to me also is a red flag that it seems a bit old school and a little bit on the spammy side to me. At this stage, to be kind of, instead of leaning into the brand, to be leaning into sort of what's effectively an exact match domain attempt. I also question whether anybody really Googles customers that stick, so it feels like it's shooting them in the foot either way. Overall, I just feel like the website itself is very generic and has some of the same issue that the Sky Factory website has, where there's just all this dead space at the top. I had a lot of thoughts about this one from the customer perspective, because from looking through the site, my instinct is they're targeting smaller businesses and kind of local businesses based on the fact they highlight their locations. They have a stock photo of a mechanic, I think, is what the photo is, on the homepage. And they seem to be kind of targeting people who want someone to kind of take it on and do it for them. And yet there's a lot of jargon. There's a lot of kind of stuff that's not very clear. The biggest thing I noticed is none of the service pages offer any testimonials or logos of businesses they've worked with. They do have a whole bunch of websites, I presume, that they've built on the online presence service page, where it links to a whole bunch of websites, and my guess is that these are websites that they created for customers. It's not very clear, but the rest of the services, there's no reviews. I was a little bit annoyed by the, let me find it, the second one, lead generation, I think, is the service where in lieu of a testimonial, there's just a ticker that talks about the number of impressions in total and clicks. And I'm looking at that sort of thinking, like, this doesn't tell me anything about performance, about how your clients feel about your work, or even about what this looks like on a client basis, because depending on the number of clients this is spread out over, it may or may not be impressive. So yeah, I just think there's a lot that could be done here to make it more, like, speak more to what this business is really and who the people are behind it. There's really nothing that looks like real employees on here for the most part. There's a couple photos sprinkled around, but also like who they're talking to. How do I know if I'm the right person for this? Because sometimes it feels very like designed for people who don't know anything about marketing, and in other places there's a lot of jargon that I would have no idea about if I wasn't immersed in this space. So it feels like there's just lack of clarity around who we're talking to and what we're trying to tell them.
Good. Dixon saying in the chat to me, wasn't this my tagline 10 years ago? I know 10 years ago it was internet marketing, not digital marketing, Dixon. That was the phrase to go for. But I mean, in relation to Bridget, what you were saying there, the targeting, I guess that kind of covers that as well. Is digital marketing just far too broad for an agency to claim that they're specialists in nowadays? Do they have to be very, very niche and just be specialists in particular services?
I don't think so. I think actually, if anything, having the broad skill set to offer strategy at a more integrated level is important. I don't think it's necessarily, I mean, it depends. If you are able to work with someone strategic and then they can direct you to a place that's very targeted and specializes, great. But especially if you're a smaller business, which, like I mentioned, this seems to be targeting, if you can work with somebody who's kind of able to give you the whole strategy and overview of what you need to think about and focus on, that's helpful. And I think it's possible to do that effectively, but this feels a little bit too generic. It feels like they don't have a point of view, which then makes me wonder whether there is strategy involved or whether it's just going to be a list of best practices that we're kind of ticking off that may or may not be the right fit for my business.
Great advice. Bridget, I'm going to get Nick back on now. He's, I think, screaming to get back on, sharing different advice in the chat there. So I'll take you off for him there. But Bridget, thanks so much for joining us. Could you just tell the viewer a little bit more about you and where to get hold of you? Sure.
So right now I'm working as a digital strategist at a company called Wheelhouse DMG in Seattle. And as David mentioned, I also have my personal website, bridgetrandolph.com, and I'm on Twitter at Bridget Randolph. So if anybody wants to talk more about any of this stuff or ask questions, I'm always happy to chat. And thank you so much, David, for having me on. This has been really fun hanging out with you and all the others today, Chris, Jono, and Nick. Good to see you all again. So yeah, thanks so much.
Superb. Okay, thanks, Bridget.
See you later.
Now, so we'll get Nick back on there, who's saying maybe not have the top right link. Let's talk. Go to a 404. So bit of a challenge there, certainly. So let's make sure we get Nick back on the screen there. We've got about 10 minutes or so just to bring the session to a conclusion there. So we'll just focus in on this website and see if they're doing anything particularly well, or if it's just a list of things, I guess, for them to be focusing in on to improve things. So Nick's joined us again. Nick, anything else jumped out at you apart from links perhaps not working as they should do?
Yeah, I don't know if that's being fixed on the fly. But yeah, that might indicate that they need to just have a double check across the technical and just see if something weird's happening there. But it's definitely going to 404 for a while. It is now going to 200 for me. I think it just needs to. I think the problem with agency sites is you have to work out what they're really for. And I've had my share of agency sites as well, and it's difficult because you kind of feel like you kind of want to tell the world about digital marketing, and that's not actually the function for an agency site. I don't think it's lead gen. It's usually lead gen for people you've met. So it's driving leads from contacts, from word of mouth. I think that's where the work actually comes from. So I think you go with a much clearer proposition on it. I think the opening line on there, complementary online analysis, that's just not. That doesn't leap out at you. I mean, if they're offering free audits, that's great. I think you can make that a lot more attractive to people. And then to provide credibility. It's not when I kind of go down the page, I start to see different things that are happening, partners, there's a bit of recruitment. It's a lot of things happening there. And I think it should be clearer. If people, why are people coming to this website? Well, they probably engaged with you already. And so they're coming to the website and they want to have some sort of idea of credibility. They want to know they take it the next stage on, and then they come into the lead funnel. So how can I kind of capture those people, convince them that I've got the right thing that they need, and then start that conversation. So yeah, I'd just make it a lot simpler. I'd have case studies on there. We talked about testimonials before, but case studies is what you need for an agency. There's a lot of emphasis there.
Do you need a blog?
No, not well. Not initially.
Oh, it's the one thing they're doing well.
Do you think?
They've got a news section has real potential. It's full of character.
Yeah, I was going to say that's where I'd run actually on that is leverage that. There's a lot of people working in the organisation. There's some bright minds in there almost certainly. I think the buzz as a piece is the route to market, their reach is relatively limited at the moment, but they've got that real potential there to show the world what it is they're kind of doing. And I think more agencies need to do that and show they're practicing what they preach, because they're almost certainly telling the clients to do that more.
Nick, you also said one of the primary reasons for an agency to have a website is lead generation for people you've met. Are you talking about people that you've met face to face? Or are you talking about people that you've have interacted with your content somewhere else?
I think interacting with the content somewhere else. I mean, obviously you're reaching out in a digital sense. I think you can see they're trying to get a lot of results there for locations, and I think that's probably. I don't know if those offices are actual offices. It'd be quite interesting. They don't seem to be kind of. I would do more to make those more authentic, and I think we mentioned that. Why have a picture of the location? Have a picture of the office. If there's people there, I want to see the people there, and get more of a feel of what they've been doing. And you could link that whole office section into the content. So if different people working around that organisation, who's producing what, which office, who's working where, is this an actual sort of network? But yeah, I think you're right. They kind of engage through your content and they do it face-to-face bit, but you have to get credibility. So these are people who are coming to your website and they have to know that they want to take it the next stage on and do it and fill out a lead form. I think that's really for me as an agency. I think there's too many agencies trying to kind of talk to the world in too wider aspect and probably focusing a little bit more on just lead gen would make sense.
And yeah, there's quite a few locations by the look of it. I've scrolled down to the bottom of the website and see different cities and different states, I think, in the US. So as you say, if there are real offices, you'd like to see people who are working in those offices and tell the story behind the brand itself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I think it's it just looks like it's a bit sparse. I think there could be a lot more information on there. I'd definitely, just for my own sake, really, with Google, I'd make those look a bit more substantial.
Chris, have you any kind of final thoughts on building a better agency website?
I don't know. Let as few people in the organisation as possible see it. And it sounds counterintuitive, but it's a minefield. You've got the room full of people who probably feel like they're more qualified than most to do the process, and you just get mired in it. And actually, part of that is, I've seen it happen before. The reverse is no expertise is sought, and very often you produce something you would never ship for a client. And I think, build the key project team on there that know what they're talking about, and then don't let anyone else get anywhere near it until it's ready to go. They've got 100 plus nerds on staff. Each one of them have many opinions on it. I don't feel like that this website's been designed by all 100 people. It feels quite streamlined, but there will be 1 or 2 people on that staff that I'd want involved at the top table for the process. They've almost certainly got the skills there.
Jono, how many people are too many people to design a website?
More than one. So they should definitely be mining their expertise, and it feels like the step they've missed before that is working out. And Bridget covered this very well. Is are they trying to present themselves as comprehensive experts in the whole of digital marketing, or are they trying to be a good one-stop shop for small businesses? And at the moment, it feels like they're trapped between those two identities. And if you can pick one of those, then they can absolutely, 100 nerds is a great soup to then work out the answer to that. But at the moment, things like their service definitions are all over the place. They're inconsistent. It's unclear whether this is all one bundle and one package, or whether this is 10 things they offer, or whether I can have just one of those individual bits of one of the services. I really don't know what they do, whether it's for me. So work that out, and then pull in the right designers, developers, whoever to do that. But the content needs to be the right fit for their audience, and I don't even know if they know who that is yet.
Superb stuff. Now, in terms of introductions, I don't think we actually gave Nick an introduction to begin with, because
you can let Jono do that. That's fine.
Later on. Yeah. So Jono, would you like to introduce Nick?
No, I couldn't be just at all.
No, I'll just say quickly, Nick's a speaker, consultant and non-executive director. He's also the search product owner at Vodafone Group. You find him over at nickwilsden.com. So we're just coming towards the end of this session. Nick, is there anything else that you'd like to add? And is there any other place that people should check you out online?
Come talk to me on Twitter. Always more than happy to do that. Nick Wilsden is my handle on there. That's probably the best way to get hold of me.
I love how Jono adds comments that he doesn't actually want to say live on the video in the chat. Yes. And Jono, where can people find out more about you? And
on Twitter at Jono Alderson, and I promise to be nice.
Superb stuff. And Chris, thanks for joining us as well. And where can people find out more about you?
Twitter again, Chris Green 87. Mostly there, just kind of talking SEO virtually all the time. So no, it's been great to be on here, and love talking about this stuff. So well done, David.
Yeah, thanks guys for coming on. It's good to have you as part of it. Thanks for your post-its.
Oh yeah, I've got these notes.
Yes. So great stuff. So I'm going to finish this session just now. I just to let you guys know, if you stay here, then you'll probably stay live to the audience. So feel free to do that if you want to do that. But I think it seems to be the way that Crowdcast works. I'm going to go to the green room and get the other session underway, and the way that works is I call the audience to that and when we're ready to go. So I'm probably going to take just a little break, probably about an 8-minute break before we start the next session at 4:45 p.m. UK time. So stick with us, please. Stay exactly where you are if you're watching this now, and we'll be back with you actually in about 7 minutes time. Thanks again, guys. Great session.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Thank you.